Hello, I am Valerie Kapp, and in today's webinar, we will be talking about assistive technology and the resources available to you and your consumer in the web portal. We will also be talking about video conferencing. Some of the information we will discuss today includes the levels of the assistive technology continuum, the best way to begin selecting an assistive technology device, myths about assistive technology, and steps to take and how to decide what type of assistive technology device is right for you and your consumer. We will also share resources for accessible technology products for computers. These products make it easier for anyone to see, hear, and use technology and to personalize their computers to meet their own needs and preferences. The video conferencing information will include how to access the web portal, how to use the web portal, problem solving, and those types of things. So let's get started. We will begin with the definition of assistive technology. Assistive technologies include mechanical, electronic, and microprocessor-based equipment. Could be non-medical and non-electronic aids. It could be specialized instructional materials, services, and strategies that people with disabilities can use to assist them in learning, making the environment more accessible, enabling them to compete in the workplace, enhance their independence, or otherwise improve their quality of life. Assistive technology is any item, piece of equipment, software, or product system that is used to increase, maintain, improve the functional capabilities of individuals with disabilities. Here is a resource in the web portal, an article which explains what is assistive technology. This is an article from Georgia Tech, Tools for Life. It gives examples of the different assistive technology devices, low-tech devices, such as canes and walkers, reachers and grabbers, middle of the continuum technology, manual wheelchairs, books on CD, and then the high-tech assistive technology, such as digital hands-free headsets and Bluetooth integration. I like this article because it has clear definitions with specific examples. So that could be a resource that you could assign your consumer to go to look at to help them understand what is assistive technology and some of the devices that it's talking about. Assistive technology, based on the definition, if an item as basic as a large grip pen is used to increase, maintain, or improve functioning for someone with difficulty gripping, it can be considered assistive technology. We will move on to assistive technology services and what that means. Assistive technology service is any service that helps an individual to select, obtain, or use an assistive technology device. The services could include evaluating a person's needs, customizing an assistive technology device, having a chance to try an assistive technology device, and training of how to use that assistive technology device. Which leads us to the question, what's the purpose of assistive technology? When you're talking about employment, assistive technology devices can be an accommodation that allows an individual to complete their work tasks and the essential functions of their jobs. An example: suppose you have a consumer who's had a stroke and she can now only use one-handed type, and her essential functions include needing to type reports, sending emails, letters, and doing research. So this person may be able to use a smaller one-handed keyboard as assistive technology device. Here is an example of voice recognition software, which is the ability of a program to identify words and phrases in spoken language and convert them into a machine-readable format. So a person will be able to use this if they wouldn't be able to type or use the keyboard of a computer. They could talk into a headset and the computer would then type it on the screen for them. Let's now review 6 myths about assistive technology. The first myth: an assistive technology device is a luxury. For someone with a disability who relies on assistive technology to perform a critical function or to achieve a desired goal in life, assistive technology is very much a necessity. Just because a device makes a task easier or more convenient to do does not make it a luxury. The second myth: assistive technology is expensive and complicated. The majority of assistive technology solutions are simple, inexpensive, low-tech devices such as hands-free telephone, magnifiers, or wood blocks to raise a desk or workstation, and all those things can be found at a local hardware or office supply store. An assistive device could be as simple as rearranging a workspace. According to the Job Accommodations Network, more than half of all accommodations cost nothing to make, while the rest typically cost only $600. The third myth: assistive technology is a magic cure-all for people with disabilities. By itself, assistive technology will never completely remove the difficulties which come with having a disability. Assistive technology is often used to improve, complement, or expand other services or solutions. The fourth myth: one source has all the answers. It's important for people with disabilities, their family members, and all professionals involved to learn all they can about technology. Sharing this knowledge and experience helps decide which device will work best for the individual. The fifth myth: assistive technology should be purchased even if the consumer isn't ready. Using assistive technology is a personal decision made by the consumer in coordination with the rehab professionals. Many people prefer the familiar to something new and can be scared of using assistive technology. Even though assistive technology lets people do things more easily, more independently, or sometimes even for the first time, everyone has their own learning curve. So everyone needs to be patient as the consumer decides about assistive technology devices. The final myth we're going to be talking about is the one related to if a technology solution is available, it will be used. Using tools successfully depends on several things. Involvement of consumers and their family is necessary in evaluating, selecting, and training for any device. Services and devices are often limited or useless if they are pushed on an individual with disabilities without involving them in the process. So it's critical that you involve the consumer in the process of evaluating, selecting, and training for the assistive technology device. So we can think of assistive technology as the missing piece of a puzzle. That piece that can enable a consumer to achieve her employment and independent living goals. The challenge is to find that missing piece. Let's talk about the assistive technology hierarchy. It begins with the use of no technology, where you find an alternative way to do the task. You can modify or adapt the task when possible. You can restructure tasks, activities, and the environment to compensate for functional limitations, including architectural modifications or attendant care arrangements. The hierarchy continues with the use of commercially available devices, equipment, or aids, or using commonly available devices and equipment in creative ways, such as using a wireless doorbell indoors to signal. The next step would be modifying existing commercial devices, equipment, and aids using easily obtainable materials such as Velcro or duct tape. And lastly, you could design and fabricate custom devices, equipment, and aids. Now let's talk about the assistive technology continuum. No tech, low tech, medium tech, high tech. High tech. That incorporates sophisticated electronics or computers. Medium tech, relatively complicated mechanical devices such as wheelchairs. Moving on to low tech, those are devices less sophisticated and can include such things as adapted spoon handles, non-tipping drinking cups, and Velcro fasteners. And the no-tech solutions, those are the ones that make use of procedures, services, and existing conditions in the environment that do not involve the use of devices or equipment such as physical therapy, occupational therapy, or services of other specialists. And here you see a listing of some of the types of assistive technology in the continuum. Note-tech examples: detailed outlines for note-taking, magnifying glass, large textbooks. Low-tech, videotaping class lectures, assisted listening devices, switch-controlled devices. High-tech examples: touch screens, speech recognition software, computerized testing. More examples of low-tech assistive technology devices: handheld magnifiers, labels to enlarge letters on the keyboard, highlighters or color-coded labels, electric staplers. Examples of mid-technology assistive technology devices: telephone headsets, talking dictionaries, digital organizers, recorders, visual auditory alarms, alternate keyboards or mouse devices. And here are some other examples of high-tech assistive technology devices. Voice recognition or other specialized software, adjustable height tables, braille note-taking devices, video magnifiers, and power wheelchairs. So let's talk about accessible technology. Microsoft and Apple both offer accessible technology products to assist individuals to be able to use computers. Here we have Microsoft Accessibility Mission. Accessibility makes it easier for anyone to see, hear, and use technology and to personalize their computers to meet their own needs and preferences. For many people with disabilities, accessibility is what makes computer use possible. Accessibility options include display, keyboard, mouse, sound, and speech options. Assistive technology products or specialty software and hardware products such as screen readers and specialty keyboards provide computer access to individuals with significant vision, hearing, dexterity, language, and learning needs. So let's look at the types of assistive technology products from Microsoft. This website has a listing and description of assistive technology products. So let's look at the types of assistive technology products from Microsoft. This website has a listing and description of assistive technology products. So let's go to that website. So as you can see on the website, there's alternative keyboards, electronic pointing devices, sip and puff systems, on-screen keyboards, screen enlargers or screen magnifiers, text-to-speech, lots of resources to help people with disabilities access computers. Another thing that is great about this website that it has a decision tree to help you identify the right assistive technology for the consumer. So you click on that, and down here it says assistive technology decision tree. And again, assistive technology decision tree. And here you have the document. And here you have the assistive technology decision tree. At the top, it has impairment, level of functionality, and suggested technology. The impairments they list is range of motion issues, quadriplegic, back impairment, visual impairment, auditory impairment, speech impairment, and psych impairment. So let's look at the decision tree for psych impairment. That's what is the level of functionality. So here it has inability to focus, maintain concentration. Representative technology would include oversized monitor, task organization software, graphical idea tree, Palm Pilot, white noise generator. Let's look at another one. How about one with the impairment with the back, the level of functionality, static position preferred. So that's a yes. The representative technology would be a foot mouse, ergo keyboard, movable numeric keypad, electric office equipment, articulated keyboard, and mouse tree. So that gives you an example of how you could use the decision tree to help you and your consumer decide what would be a good assistive technology device for them. We're looking at the Apple Assistive Technology website. So let's go to that website. They have accessible technology products for people with vision issues, hearing, physical and motor skills, learning, and literacy. So let's go to learning and literacy. That'll take you to what products are available to assist people with those barriers. Simple Finder, dictionary, text-to-speech, word completion. And again, that's the Apple Assistive Technology products that you can go to and see what's available for you and the consumer if they use an Apple computer. So you and your consumer have now seen some assistive technology devices and some products. So how do you select the appropriate assistive technology device? It's always best to start with the low-tech assistive technology. It costs less, it's easier to learn how to use, and it will need less maintenance or repair. If a low-tech device doesn't remove or reduce the barrier, then you move up the continuum until the appropriate device is found. So you have someone with a speech or communication barrier. Here are some examples of communication boards. Here's some examples of mobility aids, a walker, a Hoyer lift, and wheelchairs. Here we have computer access products, as we talked before with Microsoft and Apple. You have Dragon, touchscreen, and then voice activation for using the computer. In the web portal, you will see assistive technology resources, and these are two of them. So we have Assistive Technology of Ohio. Go to that website. This website has resources for people with disabilities, including technology and including other areas as well. Like they have assistive technology for sale, there's resources for accessible housing, for sports and recreation and leisure, for voting, so it includes not only assistive technology, but also resources for other areas for people with disabilities. Illinois has assistive technology related resources website through the Illinois Department of Human Services. And if you click on Illinois Assistive Technology Program, which is a statewide nonprofit agency, takes you to that website, and the service lists their services like device loan, financial loans, demonstration center, training. So this is a good website for people who live in Illinois regarding assistive technology. So So what can people do to help them decide what type of device is best for them? There are several ways a person can decide what type of assistive technology device will help them reduce or remove barriers and improve their functioning. First, a formal assistive technology evaluation. This is usually done by a certified assistive technology professional, an occupational or physical therapist, or a rehabilitation engineer. The second thing a person could do would be to visit an assistive technology demonstration center so they could see and learn what features and devices they have to offer. The third thing a person could do is to try the product before they buy it. An assistive technology device loan could allow the person to try a device to use it in their own environment, whether that's at home, at work, or at school. The person can find out if the device works the way they want it to and expect it to before they buy it. So here is an article, Questions and Answers on Customized Employment, Assistive Technology as a Workplace Support. This is from the Virginia Commonwealth University. It basically covers some of the questions we talked about previously, and it gives some good explanations and answers. Again, if you and your consumer are discussing assistive technology, you could assign them to go to the web portal, to this specific article, and read it, and then they could come back and you could discuss at your next appointment the information from the article and what they learned. So some of the questions: what is assistive technology? What types of assistive technology are available? Where do you begin when assisting someone with a significant physical disability in finding community employment? Does a person need to learn how to use assistive technology before conducting a job search? How will an employment specialist know if a job can be customized to match the interests and abilities of an individual with a disability if the person is not taught to use assistive technology prior to employment? How will an employment specialist determine if a person will be able to physically complete job duties when working with an employer to customize a position? Who should be responsible for determining what assistive technology a person needs in the workplace? Isn't assistive technology expensive? One of the myths we talked about. Don't employers have to pay for assistive technology if the person needs the device to work? And are there any other funding options to pay for assistive technology related to work? So they have some good questions and good answers related to customized employment and assistive technology. I like to end with this quote from Mary Pat Radabaugh: conveniences versus possible. For Americans without disabilities, technology makes things easier. For Americans with disabilities, technology makes things possible. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jared Embry, and this is an introduction to video conferencing. That's me, down on the left-hand side of your screen. Everybody else who's on the screen right now is a digital sample, so if it looks like their resolution is a little bit less than what you'd expect, that's why. And don't worry, they're not bored, but they were kind enough to lend us their images so that we'd have some people to play with and talk about as we move through all of this. I do have a tendency to explain things as if you've never done anything before, so if I'm going over things that you're already familiar with, I certainly mean no offense. But I like to make sure that we're not missing anything, so we just go through step by step. The program that we're going to be using and talking about today is OmniJoin. OmniJoin is one of many video conferencing programs that's out there. If you're more familiar with Skype or something like Google Hangouts or FaceTime, that's fine. those are all basically the same thing. So I always tell people, it's kind of like Chevys and Fords. They're all trucks. As we go through this, anything that I'm telling you, the names and the buttons and things may be in slightly different places, but the ideas are the same. Okay? So starting off, we'll take you across the tabs on the top of the screen. The first one is the meeting tab. So you have the ability to invite people to meetings if they haven't already been invited. There's a button here that says record meeting. And for now, that button looks like we could actually go up and click it and record something. For your purposes, that'll actually be grayed out and it'll be disabled. So we don't want anybody to be recording people's private information. But just so when you see it, you'll know what that's about. The third button is to take host or presenter, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later, as well as to lock meeting and to leave meetings and end meetings. The second tab is the Share tab. With this program, you can share a whole lot of different types of programs. So you could share a PowerPoint, which is usually the kind of thing that people are doing if they're making a presentation, and that's what we're doing today. You could also share a document. Let's say someone wanted to look at a plan of action for what they're going to be working on before your next meeting. You can also share individual programs. So if you wanted to share a statistics program or you wanted to share a video editing program and show somebody something you were doing, those are just some examples. The third tab is the video tab, and that's what's going to control the video for all of these different screens that you're looking at. We'll go over that in more detail in a little bit. The fourth tab is the audio. Now, this tab is controlling just the audio for my side of the conversation. We'll talk a little bit more about how you can control other people later on too. The fifth tab is the layout tab, and that's going to show you different ways that you can lay out the screen, and those are all personal preferences. The first basic thing that I want to talk about is light. Now, if you look at the screen, you'll see that everyone is lit a little bit differently, but I'm going to have you look at the young lady in the red, her face looks really dark. So I always sort of imagine it's raccoon eyes. Part of that is because she is lit from above, so there's light coming at her from above. The second part is that she's backlit. So if you look behind her, you can see that her windows are open and there's light coming in. So the camera is trying to compensate for all that extra light by darkening the image, but what we end up with is it's a very difficult thing for us to see her face. So that's not an ideal lighting situation. If you look now down at the next person below it, he's lit a lot more traditionally. He's sitting in front of a wall, he has the blinds closed behind him, and he has mostly his face is lit just by the light from the computer screen in front of him. So he's still a little bit darker, but you can see all the details of his face, you can make out his expressions. The last person is the woman who's wearing the headset, and if you look at her, she's lit a little more like what you would expect. She has good light on the front of her. She doesn't have open windows or anything behind her. She's a nice, easy person to see. The next thing I want to talk about is sound. There are a lot of different ways that you can get sound in OmniJoin. The first and the one that I always prefer is to use USB sound. And when we get a little further into this conversation, we're going to talk more about how you can select those different audio sources. But for now, just know that there's either USB sound or there's often a microphone or a headset jack in a computer. It's a 3.5 millimeter round jack. You've probably seen them before. And the third one that's usually an option is the onboard sound. So if you're using a laptop, let's say, most laptops, modern laptops, will have a speaker and a microphone built into them. So you can use all three of those different options. I want to go ahead and recommend that you use a USB option if you can. And the easiest option there is to use a USB headset. So if you look at the young lady on the right-hand side of the screen, she is wearing a Logitech USB headset. They're very inexpensive, but she's also wearing it properly. So if you look on the side of her face, where the microphone is lined up, it lines up right to the corner of her mouth, and you'll get nice, clear sound from that. If the microphone is lower or higher, you won't get as clean a sound, but you can experiment with that a little bit once you get into the program. The next thing I want to talk about is framing and how you frame yourself in this video. So we've already set up all of these in sort of traditional frames, so you can see that you can see my face and a little bit of the top of my body. So you can make out some of my body language. You can see if I'm leaning in and paying attention. You can see if I'm back and I'm twiddling my thumbs and I'm not really engaged in the conversation. You want to be able to make all of that out, and you want your consumers to be able to make that out as well. So when you're setting up your camera, you want to make sure that you adjust it so that you're looking at the right framing. So just to make it obvious, you wouldn't want to have it pointed down or you're cutting people's heads off, but you also wouldn't want to have it aimed so high that you're wasting the space that you have available. So we'll just leave that pretty much where it was. Okay? The last thing that I want to talk about is attitude. So this is just a conversation. Your consumers will pick up on your attitude and they'll mimic that as well. So smile. If you're a little nervous or not sure about what you're doing, take a deep breath and just try to relax. For a lot of people, the first couple of video conferences that they do can be a little distracting. It's easy to get sucked into what the technology is and you're not sure what you're doing. Try to remember you're just talking to somebody. A couple first steps that we want to talk about are cameras and microphones. And with a camera, if you're using a laptop that has a built-in webcam already, you don't have to worry about all this. It's all already going to be there for you. If you are going to use an external webcam like the ones that we're using today, you want to make sure that you find as nice a one as you can. Some of them are HD now and they're very inexpensive. Set that up, get it framed like we talked about before, and make sure that it's plugged in. I'd say that the 9 out of 10 times when you have problems with your camera, it's that the camera hasn't actually been plugged in. The USB isn't all the way put in. So that's a really easy way to save yourself the trouble of trying to troubleshoot everything in the complicated ways. Just go ahead and make sure that everything's where it's supposed to be. The same is true for audio. I'd say that more than 90% of the audio problems that we have that you'll run into are very simple. It's either that they're not plugged in or that the mute is on. So we'll go ahead and check those things first. And you do want to try and make sure that you're using a USB headset. That'll give you the most clear audio and the audio that you can control the most easily. The third thing that I want to talk about is your internet connection. Most of the time, your internet connection is going to be good enough. OmniJoin has the ability to adjust the frame rate and the resolution of the image that they're using to make up for the fact that you may have differences in your internet connection. But a good rule to remember is a little more than 4 megabits per second for a download and a little more than 1 megabit per second for upload, and that'll give you a nice clear image. It'll work with less than that, but you'll start to see a much more pixelated version. So it'll actually start to look a little bit more like the sample video that we're looking at on the right-hand side of the screen now. The last thing that I want to talk about is the meeting room, and that's basically a URL. So if you look at the bottom of the screen right now, it'll say connected, address, and HTTPS .omnijoin. Even though it looks like you're looking at a program that's running right now, what you're really looking at is a web page. So when you go to one of these meeting rooms, what you're really going to is a unique web address, and your consumer is going to the same web address, and that's how you're finding each other. Because you're doing a web address, if you're choosing to go to this meeting through a different browser, some browsers work better than others with video conferencing. If you're using Safari, let's say, and you find that that's giving you some trouble, you might want to try Chrome. If you're using Chrome and that's giving you some trouble, you might want to try Internet Explorer. I usually recommend that people start off with Google Chrome. That's one that we've had the least amount of problems with, but you can use whatever you like. If you're using this and you've already had your organization download the desktop client, then none of that's going to matter. You actually are going to be running it like a program on your computer. But it's just good to remember when you need to send a link out to somebody, it's actually just a web page. It's a URL that you're going to. Now, we already did the quick, brief view of OmniJoin, but I'd like to go into a little more detail. I want to start off talking about layouts and how videos are organized. So if you go to the Layout tab, and that's the 5th tab here on the top, you'll see a whole bunch of different layouts that are available. So let's just do them in order. Layout number 1, and this is the one that will by default be on when you enter a meeting room, gives you a few different things. It's going to always give you the videos that are up and running on the left-hand side there. Underneath it, you'll see a list of the names. Now, because we're just doing this as a demonstration, many of them have my name. But you can see across the bottom that all of those different people are in, and that some of them are hosts and participants, and we're going to talk about that next. But you can see who is in your meeting room. Okay? The second layout, and this is all just personal preference, just moves everything over to the other side of the screen. The third layout moves the videos across the top. The fourth video layout is basically so that you want to use this for a webinar. So if you were doing a presentation, you can see the videos there on the side, but you may find that it's more important that you want to share the desktop, share an application like we talked about before, or share a PowerPoint presentation, or maybe you just want to share a chat. And if you're chatting with somebody and you can't see them, you could do that as well. The fifth layout is only the shared menu. So if you don't need to see each other for the portion of the presentation that you're in, you may choose to just show the PowerPoint at this point. The sixth tab is video only, and this is one that I use probably the most. I'll start off in the layout number 1, and then once I get things where I want them, I'll move over to the video only layout, because really it's a conversation. I want to be able to see the person that I'm talking to. So let me show you just a couple different examples of how you can lay out videos. Full screen is pretty obvious. If you hit full screen, only the videos fill the screen. But beside that, you'll see best fit, which is what we're currently looking at. And that's just going to make everybody's videos the same size. The second choice is tabs. And tabs is exactly what it sounds like. You'll be able to click on different tabs and choose people who you want to see and just move through to those different folks. The third option is floating. And like I said, these are going to look a little bit strange because the resolution is low. But let's say that you wanted to move these around in some other way. If you're someone who uses more than one monitor, this can be really nice because you may choose to have one screen where you just completely fill it with the video from the webcam that you're watching. You probably don't want to watch yourself, which is what I'm doing, but you might want to watch one of your other consumers. The fourth option is picture-in-picture, and you'll be able to select the active picture. So in this case, I'll say Jared, and the active picture is me up here. It's the big one, and then it just makes everyone else smaller around the periphery. You can also change the size of those smaller videos on the left-hand side of your screen by just scrolling down to a smaller percentage. Often what will happen is if I'm only having a conversation with one person, I probably want to see that person, and I don't really need to see myself. So I'll use picture-in-picture and scroll down and just make myself small in the corner. But that way I know that that is at least turned on. I know what's going on. The last two things on the layout tab that I want to talk about are follow my layout and apply my layout. This is going to be something that you won't be able to see as well in this presentation, but you'll have to imagine what it would be like because you're doing it for someone else. So for me, if I say follow my layout, and that you'll see that it highlights once I click on it, as I make changes in my layout, all of the other people in the conference are going to see those changes as well. So if I wanted to take a person over to a webinar version, show them part of the presentation, when I get to the point where I'm ready to do, let's say, a question and answer at the end, I could switch back over to video only, and then they would only see the videos. And as I make those changes, they're just along for the ride. So that's one way of doing that. If you don't have follow my layout toggled, there's a button underneath it that says apply my layout. Apply my layout is the same as follow my layout, but it's one time. So if, for example, I had a consumer who was having trouble laying things out the way that they wanted, I could set it up for them. So I could change my screen exactly like I have it now so that I see my own face and their face is small in the corner. Press apply my layout, and now everyone else is going to see the exact same thing that I'm seeing. So my consumer would see me and them small in the corner. Because I'm not having them follow my layout anymore, I could then go back here and choose picture in picture and choose the active picture, and let's say that I want to see that my consumer instead, and I want to have my own picture down small in the bottom. The next thing I want to talk about is what level of person you are in the meeting. So every meeting that someone goes into has hosts, presenters, and participants. And if you go over to your meeting tab, if you go over to your layout tab and hit style 1, on the left hand side you'll see the list, and you'll see there are two groups right now. There are hosts and there are presenters. So when a person is a host of their meeting, it's sort of like being the owner of your own office. So I can, as a host, I can control everything in the meeting room. I can turn things on, I can turn things off, I can make adjustments to audio and video, and we're going to talk more about that in a little bit. I can expel people from the meeting, I can lock the meeting room, but most of the time, a person joining a meeting isn't going to have those kinds of permissions. So instead, usually people are presenters. So what we'll do is we'll make Kathy a presenter right now. So now Kathy is a presenter. What that means is she does not control whether someone comes in or out of the room. She does not control locking the room. What she is able to do is present. She's able to share things. And that's the next thing that we're going to talk about. The last person on the list is a participant, and a participant is what most of your consumers will be while you're in these meetings. They're along for the ride. They are basically there to see the information that you're presenting and also to be able to communicate and ask questions, but they can't control anything in the room. Next, I'd like to talk about sharing. And if you look on the left-hand side, upper left-hand side of the screen, the second tab that says Share will show you all the different things that you might choose to share. So if you wanted to bring up, let's say, a PowerPoint presentation and you had that ready, you could click on that and bring it up for us. You might also say that I want to bring up a web browser and show someone something. So let's go ahead and try that. All right, so now we have Google up and running, and let's say that maybe what we want to do is look for video conferencing tutorials for OmniJoin. If you wanted to show your consumer all those results, you could easily do that. Maybe they want to see the getting started videos, and there's all sorts of resources there for them to use. When you're ready to stop sharing, there's a red X that says stop sharing, and you'll be back into the normal view that you're used to. When you're in a meeting, you can take control of other people if they're having trouble. So you've probably worked with an IT person who's done that for you in the past, where they asked for permission for you. They wanted you to give them permission so that they could control your computer and help you sort out a problem that you were having. OmniJoin allows you to do that exact same thing for your consumers. So let's say that we wanted to control Kathy. I can right click on Kathy and it brings up this menu. And there's all sorts of options here, but the one we're going to talk about first is remote control. Okay? Once I click remote control, Kathy will have a window that pops up for her asking her to come on and accept that I'm controlling her computer. Once she clicks that, I'll see some options. So she has two different monitors set up right now. I'm going to select which one I want to control. And now I have the ability to move around on her desktop and make changes to whatever I need to. So if she was having trouble, I could help her out by looking at the settings on her computer and choosing whatever thing I needed to do to fix things for her. When I'm ready to stop, I do the same thing we talked about earlier and bring up that stop sharing, and that'll go away again. The next thing I'd like to talk about is chatting, and we're going to find that on the menu button again. So if we go down and click on one of our participants and right click, we'll see an option for a private chat. So if I wanted to have a private conversation with one of the people who was in my meeting room, I could do that. If I wanted to have a chat that everyone in the entire room could see, I can do that as well. And that's at the top of the share page here. If I click chat, I can choose chat with all attendees. Okay. And everyone can type in their different messages to one another. This is particularly handy in case you're having some trouble with the audio. So if someone doesn't have a microphone, or there's somebody who prefers to type their questions, they have that option. We already talked a little bit about following and applying layouts, and I know that I've mentioned locking and ejecting, but let me show you a couple of ways that that works. The first thing we want to talk about is locking a meeting room. In the upper left-hand corner of the screen, you'll see the meeting tab, and there's a button that looks just like a lock. If I lock the door, it's just like locking the office door behind me. Once I've locked it, no one else can join the meeting. So if for some reason you had a meeting where you had multiple people and you didn't want to have a person join early, you can hit that lock button and no one else can join it. It's a good habit to be into, especially if you're using the same meeting room to meet with different consumers. So usually once I get into a meeting room and I see that the other person I'm meeting with is in, the first thing I'll do is lock the meeting room. Once I finish that meeting and that person's done, I'll unlock the meeting room again, and then I'm ready for whatever the next meeting is going to be. So let's say that you were having 2 or 3 video meetings in a row. You had a meeting at 1 o'clock, a meeting at 2 o'clock, and a meeting at 3 o'clock. You wouldn't want to have your 2 o'clock person barge into your office. So you treat it the same way that you do have a normal meeting that you would have in person. You just close the door and lock it. Another thing that I'd like to talk about is ejecting people from the meeting. And that's not going to be something that usually is a problem for you as a one-on-one person that's having a conversation. But sometimes if you're using video conferencing for a group meeting, let's say, a person might join their meeting and be inappropriate in some way, and you'd like to have them leave. You have options. The most direct option is to just eject that person from the meeting. And that goes back to that menu that you pull up all the way at the bottom. It says expel, and if I click expel, that person's going to just be kicked out of the meeting. Another option that you might want to use instead is to allow that person to continue to watch the meeting and get some benefit from it, but you don't want them to disrupt the meeting anymore. So you could turn off their camera or turn off their audio. Across the bottom of each of these names, you'll see an icon that looks a little bit like a camera, and another icon, in this case they're grayed out, that looks a little bit like a headset. If I right click again, I currently have everyone muted because they're not really here. But if I wanted to, I could unmute, and then I'd be able to hear that person asking their questions. The same is true for the video. If I right click, I'll have pause, stop. If I pause, it's exactly like what it sounds like. It's going to pause the video. If I say stop, I can turn that back on whenever I want. The next thing I want to talk about is leaving versus ending. And on this tab at the top, you'll see that there are 2 options. One is to leave and one is to end. There's also a button on the upper right-hand corner that says leave meeting. You always want to leave your meeting. You never want to end. And often you will not have the ability to end a meeting if it's not your meeting. There are quite a few options for troubleshooting in video conferencing, but the first thing that I want to talk about is being prepared so that you don't need to troubleshoot. And so the 2 most important things there are being early whenever you have your meetings and practicing. You don't want the first time that you're going through learning how to use OmniJoin to be a time when your consumer is waiting for you and you're wasting their time as well as your own. The next thing I want to talk about is a phrase that I always toss around called self-rescue, and that is just going through the motions of what problems you think you might encounter during your video conference in advance so that you already know how to solve those problems. So we're going to practice a couple of those first of all. Now, this should be pretty familiar because we've already talked about it, but on the left-hand side of the screen, we'll see that Kathy has her headset grayed out. And that's going to mean one of two things. In this case, it means that it's muted, but it could also mean that she has no headset. So if her headset was unplugged, that would be a solution that we could look for. Or if she just needed to have her headset unmuted, she could do that as well. And that's just the same that we talked about before. Right-click and unmute. Another problem that you might look at is someone's internet speed being too slow. The easiest way to do that is to look for a person, right-click on their name to bring up that submenu, and at the top you'll see something that says System Information, and that's going to tell you a lot about what that person's troubles may be. You'll see that this particular person has a system rating of 5 out of 5 bars and a connection of 4 out of 5 bars. They're also using a Mac OS, and it tells you a little bit about the computer that they're running. Let's say that we wanted to run a bandwidth test on that person. The next thing under Network Tools allows us to do that. In the left-hand corner, you'll see that it's running, and once we finish it up, that pops up there for us to see. This can be handy if you're running into problems and you want to talk to someone's network administrator somewhere and figure out what problem they might be having. One of the first questions they're going to ask is, what kind of bandwidth did that person have? In this case, you'd be able to tell them that they had 61.9 megabits per second for download and 16.6 megabits of upload. As I said before, the majority of the problems that you run into are very simple. It's tempting to say, I want to rush to see where the technology problems are, and maybe there's a bug or maybe there's a computer problem somewhere that I can solve. But the majority of the time, the problems that you'll run into are something isn't plugged in, or you just need to go and unmute somebody. So those are things you can practice. There's nothing that you can break while you're in here. So feel free to go in and play around and get familiar with everything. We already talked a little bit about the browsers that you're using, but we can talk about that again. There are 5 major browsers that are used on desktops, and the ones that you'll most often run into are Internet Explorer, Safari, and Chrome. If you have a choice, I always recommend that you use whichever one has the least problems for you. For us, historically, that has been Chrome, but OmniJoin will work on all of them. OmniJoin will also work on mobile devices. At present, they are in beta testing for an Android application. If you're someone who uses an Apple device like an iPhone or an iPad, you can use OmniJoin on that as well. It's a little bit different in that you'll have to download the application and then type in the room number. But again, it's just a URL. So if you look at the lower left-hand side of the screen, you can see that URL. And those last letters and numbers after the equal sign are the room number that you're looking for. And last but not least, I just want to talk again about attitude. In the end, it's just a tool for you to have a conversation with somebody. So think of it like your office. Even though digitally we're coming into this place to have a conversation, it's not all that different from the room that I'm in now. I have the ability to close the door behind me and lock it. I have the ability to change by turning the lights on and off. If I want to share something with you, I can pick it up on my desk and hand it to you. All of those things are possible through video conferencing as well. They're just done digitally instead of in a physical form. If you have any questions, I've included some resources to the OmniJoin manual. It's a little over 300 pages, but they cover in great detail every possible scenario and what every single button does. They also have some much shorter, very simple getting started videos that are available online. OmniJoin's technical support staff is located in California, so during business hours in California, you can contact them directly at 855-809-5646, and you're also welcome to contact me, and if you'd like, my email is on there. Thank you for your time. I hope that it was beneficial and that you have a better idea about some of the basics of video conferencing. If you ever do have any questions, feel free to contact us and we'll be happy to help in whatever way that we can. Thank you.
Thank you for viewing today's webinar. We appreciate your time. We hope it provided information that will be useful in your daily vocational rehabilitation guidance and counseling activities with your consumer. If you would like to participate in our study, evaluating the effectiveness of online portal-based vocational service, or provide feedback regarding this webinar, please contact us. Thank you.